Last night was Trump's first Day of the Union since he was reelected, and if you missed it, you are the winner. I participated in this event, so I had to sit through it with all these fine people. We just cracked jokes in the chat and tried to make each other laugh, to chase away the overwhelming sense of dread. And it was painful because Trump gave the longest annual presidential address to Congress ever, and of course he did, because he does everything bigly. In a nutshell, it was like watching a kid who has to stand up and give an oral book report, but he didn't read the book. But he did look up the Wikipedia page for the book and kind of glance over it and be like, I got this. Only he looked up the Wikipedia page for the wrong book, and now he's just standing there confidently spewing bullshit. That's what this was. Highlights include Rep. Melanie Stansberry of New Mexico standing next to Trump holding a sign that said, "This is not normal." That and how at first there was booing for Trump, and then Texas Rep. Al Green was standing on business, stood up, and would not relent, and Mike Johnson actually had him removed. Of course, then Republicans clutched their pearls about his blatant disregard for decorum and his disrespect that he showed, completely ignoring this. How these clown farts did this time and time and time again to Joe Biden, and by the way, they were never removed. What followed that was the equivalent of one guy who had 100 or so fluffers who were just there to keep him engorged. He treated the State of the Union like a rally, where he was just there spewing bullshit, patting himself on the back. I signed these executive orders. I appointed these people. He talked about Doge, and he pointed out Elon Musk, and it was funny because he said this.
I've created the brand new Department of Government Efficiency, Doge, which is headed by Elon Musk, who is in the gallery tonight.
So Elon Musk is in charge of Doge. He is in charge. So is the White House going to walk this back, or are they just going to pretend none of that happened like you all do with goddamn everything? But a bunch of the lies were tied directly to Doge. He claimed that they had saved billions of dollars that not even Doge claims, when Doge claims way more money than they've actually saved. And then he started just repeating things that we know are false. Like he went into, there are 150-year-olds collecting Social Security. One's 350. That has been disproven. It has been shown what that is. And not only did he lie about it, that was a lie that was put on a teleprompter for him to say. They are all complicit in this shit. But that paled in comparison when he stood up there and said, we spent $8 million on transgender mice. Look it up, it's real. No, it's not. Genetically modified mice that we use for like scientific and medical research are called transgenic, not transgender. The money was for transgenic mice research, and he shut it down because he thought it was the transgenders, which, by the way, picking on transgenders and migrants was also a big part of his evening. Literally, he would talk about them, move on to something else, and come back to them multiple times. He bragged about banning transgender women from women's sports, and then he told a story about a transgender woman who had set a new record in a race. She beat the other women in the race by more than 5 hours. He kept going like, 5 hours. Can you believe it? 5 hours. Think about things like the New York Marathon and think about that. Think about a 5-hour gap and how ridiculous that sounds. And he gave no information outside of that claim. No details of what this race was or where it was, so people had to kind of go digging. And fortunately, he had kind of brought it up when he signed this order. And when that happened, the transgender woman he was speaking about realized he was speaking about her and addressed it. See, there's this bike packing event that happens in Arizona. Bike packing is where part of the event you ride your bike, other parts of the event you have to carry it on your back like a backpack. And it is 800 miles long. It takes over 8 days to complete. And yes, she completed that and set a new record of just over 5 hours past the previous record. Only here's the thing. That is a co-ed event that does not recognize a distinction between genders. So she wasn't beating the women's record, she was beating the overall record. She set the record that had been held by a man, who had broken the record that was previously held by a woman. Later last year, a Lithuanian male cyclist broke the record again. The Arizona trail race is not segregated by gender, so singling out Killips as an example of a trans woman athlete who is hurting cisgender women is nonsensical. Furthermore, when she addressed this and called them out for their bullshit trying to blame trans women, instead of saying something about like, you need to support trans women, You need to support trans athletes. She used it as an opportunity to say, why don't you try supporting women's sports? Why don't you try passing legislation for women's sports, giving funding to women's sports? She used her opportunity where she was being used as a scapegoat and a pawn in a bullshit story to not advocate for herself so much as all women athletes. And then he tossed out something about, we'll get Greenland one way or the other. Longest in history, and he said fuck all. He said nothing of consequence that mattered. He just said a bunch of bullshit as his tariff trade war is crashing our economy. He doesn't give a shit about the American people. He doesn't give a shit about the Constitution. He will only ever care about himself and the people he thinks he can get something out of. He will use you to do that.